So, this is my second attempt recording this video today. um, I have a script. I wrote a script all week. And I do better without a script. I want to have a certain magic that I come to expect from all my videos. So, with that being stated, hello, my friends. My name is Jack Ducard, and this is Sentinel Circle. So, this video today, we're going to talk about the topic that everybody's talking about, which is Jeffrey Epstein, and what has happened with the case being shut down. They determined that he did unalive himself, that there's no list, all that stuff, and nobody bought the lie. So, before I start, I want to say one thing, and that is, I'm not approaching it from a political standpoint. Now, I know a lot of people are taking this and making it political. I'm not that way. Anybody that knows me knows that I am very far from political. I'm approaching this from a human point of view because whether you are left, right, center, whatever, I think we all can agree that no children should ever be harmed, even though there are certain elements in our society currently that wants to permanently scar our children, permanently transform our children. So, with that stated, I'm going to go ahead and start my spiel. I want everybody to know that I personally abhor anything that harms a child. So, I'm going to retread some of my personal background. As everybody who knows me knows, I'm very anti-corruption, anti-child abuse. Those are my two main tenets. Okay. My ex was groomed and abused sexually by a police officer. The man was 50 years old, was married, had 2 kids of his own. My ex is the same age as his kids. They now are married and have 2 kids of their own. I had a confession from my ex about this, and at the time, against my better judgment, I hid it. It's one of many things I am very ashamed of doing. After my ex betrayed my trust, I will admit I betrayed her trust. I used that information selfishly for my criminal defense to protect me. But given the situation, given what she was currently doing to me, I felt that that was necessary. And why hold on to a secret of someone who's lied about you, lied to you, and has caused irreparable harm and damage to you? The whole situation made me understand the damage a relationship like that could have on a younger mind. And I'm talking about the grooming, the sexual exploitation, all that stuff. During my election, I worked for a bus company that the school district in my city contracted for school bus services. This experience gave me a deeper understanding of children as an adult and what they are going through, because I will admit that what I went through as a kid and what they went through as a child are 2 very different experiences. I was at the forefront of things like social media, cell phones, all that stuff. They grew up with it. So to sit there and say that I went through what they went through is completely wrong and not something logical to say. Now, yes, I will admit I don't have children of my own. I probably and most likely will not have children of my own. But I did see the variety of household situations with these children. Some of these stories I already saw warmed my heart. Very loving families, very caring families. There were homes where it was obvious that it wasn't the best environment to raise a child, but they still tried their best. And there were homes where the parents were very affluent. They had a lot of money, resources, power, connections. But the parents didn't care about the kids in that situation. Didn't give them the time of day. I realize my opinions might not align with yours. And that's okay. That's what makes us human. It's the spice of life. I like things that are different from what I know. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to agree on many things. But that's okay. But one thing I think we all can agree on, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel firmly that a society should be judged on how they care for children, the elderly, and the disabled. These groups are the most vulnerable of all of us, and we have the responsibility to stand up for these groups. You may not be disabled, and you may not yet be elderly, but everyone in my group here, everyone listening to me, every one of you has been a child at some point in your life. And I would hope that if you were in the position that these children were in, you would want someone to advocate for you, to stand up for you. Sentinel Circle has always been about giving those a voice who don't have a voice, and a platform for those who don't have a platform, to air out all of our grievances, all of our hopes, desires, triumphs, and defeats. The reason why I bring up all of this to you is so that way you, the viewer, can understand why I'm approaching the Epstein case from the way I am approaching it. Before I continue, I just want to reiterate one thing, that I don't care about the political aspect. I hate that this has become political. I hate that we are using these children, and granted, a lot of them are adults now, but at the time they were children, as pawns in some kind of sick, petty political game. I don't care what you represent or stand for. I don't care what position of the aisle you're on. I don't care if you're a person I support or I disdain. If you harm a child, you should be punished to the fullest extent. There is no compromise with that statement with me. If you hold an elected position, you should be removed before your term is ended, and you should be stripped of all benefits and privileges that come with that position if you so much as touch a child in an inappropriate way. If you are so much as convicted of any crime involving a child. That being stated, I want to move to my second point. I'm not shocked or surprised about any of this. I'm disappointed, disgusted, and angry, but not shocked or surprised. During my election, I truly believed that by taking an anti-corruption and anti-child abuser position, I would have a much stronger backing than I did. And for context, I got third place with 500 votes. That should give you an idea of how badly I did. I really wish I had a much stronger backing than I did. I had people come up to me and tell me that I should just let it go. I should hide it. I shouldn't talk about it. Because they were worried about how the community would react, how it would damage the community. It shouldn't matter. If society is built on lies, then tear it all down. Start from scratch. We have the ability to do so. If we need to protect child abusers for life to go on, then no. No, that's not what we should do. Ever. I don't believe in that one bit. But I always said with my election that if I had ran on the platform that I would cut your tax bill in half, I probably would have won. That is one regret I do have, is not doing that. I really did have a more favorable view of people. But that's the state of our society. It's sad and disappointing. Very sad and very disappointing. I'm not here to rub salt in the wound, but I got to ask everyone, what do you think was going to happen? Do you honestly think that those in positions of power and influence would be shackled up, frog marched right in front of a tribunal where their crimes were exposed for all to see, right where we can all watch on TV and YouTube and God knows what? No, my friends, no. That's not how this works. You know, the whole trial with P. Diddy, I was honestly surprised that he actually did see a courtroom. But we saw what happened there. He got nothing. They dropped many charges, and the ones he was convicted on have no real punishment behind it. He essentially walked. Yeah, he's a little poorer because he had to have a criminal defense, but he still walked. During my time in the system and as an outside observer, I have seen time and time again the sloppy work of police and prosecutors end up costing innocent people their freedom and their livelihoods. But when it matters most, the authorities, the police, the prosecutors, those that are supposed to uphold the law, as they so eloquently put to me, they always end up failing us. We pay their paycheck in taxes, but it's always, oh, it's a civil matter, or oh, we can't do anything about it. The police is always powerless to do something about it. And then when we're surprised that when people take the law into their own hands, then there's a reaction. It's sickening. In case you either didn't know or forgot, in April of this year, Virginia Roberts died by self-deletion. She was the most prominent Epstein accuser. Once the news of her passing broke, I knew right at that moment that there was no justice coming. You know, about 3 weeks before she ended her own life, she apparently was hit by a bus. And there was confusion on if she had lived or if she had passed right after that. Apparently she was depressed right afterwards because of her life was severely altered. It's disgusting. You know, all those victims, all those people damaged as a result of what he did, no one will ever experience true justice, ever. It's sad, really. But we've been here before. I'm sure many of you all probably forgot about the pizza party allegations in D.C. or the spirit cooking that came right after that. You know, that was exposed before Epstein was arrested. Whatever happened to all that? We don't talk about it. As far as I remember, one guy tried to break into that pizza parlor in D.C. to see if the dungeon was in the basement like a lot of people suspected. We don't even talk about it anymore. The pizza parlor owner was like one of the most powerful people in D.C. How does a pizza parlor owner become one of the most powerful people in Washington, D.C.? And they really think we are so blind, so ignorant. It just seems like all these allegations just spring up out of nowhere and they disappear with time. Nobody remembers. I bring it up all the time, you know, because everyone's like, "Oh, did you hear about what's going on? Can you freaking believe what's going on?" What about the pizza parties at the pizza parlors in DC? What about the spirit cooking? Oh, I don't remember that. Oh, I never heard about that. Jesus. Even in the movie Eyes Wide Shut, the Stanley Kubrick film, the original plot of the movie was about the elites in power being involved in the PDF cult. Can you believe that? That's how long this has been going on. I just want everybody who's listening to me right now to know that this isn't new. I want you to understand and appreciate the fact that this isn't new. You know, our elected leaders have always claimed to want to do what's right for us, and we sit there and say, yeah, maybe this time it'll be different. No, it never is. You know, they get in there and it just seems like as soon as they get in there, they flip like a switch. They're doing the exact same stuff. And, you know, maybe they throw us a bone here or there, but it doesn't change anything. Go ahead. Live in the clouds. Keep believing that. I'll live here on the ground where reality is. That's my choice. I want to live with reality. You know, we as men, we've been weakened and vilified for generations now. We are the descendants of men who would never have put up with this, ever. And yet, here we are. I'm talking about it to a computer screen, to a webcam. But I'm idle, just as you are, in word and in action. But then I got to ask myself, so what do we do? All we can do is talk about it. When this is transparency from the alleged adults in the room, it's no wonder why men are checking out in droves. We are constantly told to sit down, shut up, not ask any questions. But as far as I'm concerned, as an outside observer, this is a very muted response from what could happen. We're supposedly the largest armed force in the world. If we wanted to, we could do something big, but we choose not to because we've seen what has happened time and time again. Just because, you know, you're armed doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that we agree. You'd have to convince all those people, and we have subreddits like Socialist Rifles Association. Obviously, they don't agree. All I'm saying is it's obvious to those in power that let me rephrase it. It's obvious that those in power know they can get away with it now. Like, it just seems like all their lies are getting worse and worse. It's like listening to a toddler try and lie to you. It doesn't make any logical sense. Their reasoning doesn't make sense. But they can get away with it. They can lie so poorly to us, and we just sit there and take it. We don't punish them. We don't do anything. It angers me. It upsets me. It sickens me. But this is the status quo now, where they're going to lie to us. You know, there's two people in the room and they say that we're the ones that cut the cheese. You know, we know we didn't cut the cheese. It was obviously them, but they're saying it was us. Even during my election, people would approach me and tell me stories about, you know, high rollers, big wigs in my community. They'd be involved in things like murder, but it gets swept under the rug. They'd use their power and influence to get themselves out of trouble with DUIs. I mean, how many videos do you see time and time again where the police pull over a judge and the judge says, well, I'm a judge. And they say, okay, have a good nice day. You know, or the judge thinks that they can get away with it because they're a judge, or the mayor, the sheriff, you know, deputy. You know, how many times do we see that over and over and over again? You know, there was that one famous case where the Border Patrol agent was stalking and harassing his ex-wife and completely destroyed her life. And nobody did anything to help her. Like, she actually spent time in jail before someone did something. You know, and the amount of stories that people brought up to me in such a small community, mind you, was just horrifying. It was horrifying to know that these people were getting away with so much. And nobody did a thing. Nobody did anything. No one investigated. No one raised one finger to even look into it. You know, the people that were just missing. They must have run off to Mexico or something like that. You know, they can use their power and influence to get themselves out of trouble, get whatever they want. You know, they want to add another story onto their house, whatever. Meanwhile, people like you and me, the common man, we have to watch over our shoulders constantly, as we can be prosecuted for little or even no reason. No reason at all. And then all the ridiculous petty rules and regulations apply to us. We're expected to know the law. Ignorance is no excuse for not knowing the law. But when we make one misstep, one mistake, it could be used against us to bleed us dry and destroy everything we worked so hard to build and achieve. I've been told that they don't expect us to follow the law. They don't. They want ways to get us. There's literally nothing you can do to be the quote-unquote good citizen. You know, I know there are people in my crowd who served our country, and I appreciate what you've done, but was it worth it? I know you get benefits, you know, GI Bill and special loans and all that stuff, but really, was it worth it? Do you feel good knowing that you put yourself on the line for these people? If I had served, I wouldn't feel good about it. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not degrading your service. Thank you for your service. But, you know, there was this piece of history that not a lot of people know about. It was either they call it the Battle of Athens, and I think it's either Tennessee or Georgia. But after World War II, there were these corrupt cops and officials that would pull people over. You know, GIs coming back home from war, and they would take their bonuses. You know, because back then they had cash bonuses and they would be traveling with them. They would take the cash bonuses of these GIs. Straight up steal them. Those were men that fought for you and I. That fought for the very men that were literally stealing their hard-earned bonuses because of greed. And if you get the chance to, definitely look up the Battle of Athens. I think it's either Tennessee or Georgia. I'll post the link. I really want you people to understand why. You know, I strongly believe that when we talk about tyrannical government, we're not just talking about federal government. We're talking about government. From federal government to your local government. Any tyrannical government. You know, I recently did a field trip with Sam Fisher. We went and spoke to a bunch of homeless. He took me on a tour of homelessness because he lives it. I don't. And I wanted to know. I wanted to fully understand. You know, I will admit that being from California, you learn to hate the homeless. Because you watch as you're standing at the checkout line, paying with your hard-earned money the basic bare necessities. Meanwhile, some jerk is walking out the front door with groceries that you can't even afford the food that he's stealing. And you're standing there looking at him, and I gotta say, like, I feel like a chump every single time I see that. A chump. You know, because I don't believe in theft. I really don't. I believe that you should earn what you work hard for. But at this point, I'm working so hard and it just feels like I'm sinking slower and slower. You know, inflation has hit us so hard. The pandemic, everything. And I'm forced to wonder, why am I doing this to myself? You know, I look around. Ever since that field trip, I look around and I spoke to those men. I see so much wasted potential dying on the pavement. You know, all of us could do great, amazing things. That's if we were allowed to flourish, if we were allowed to spread our wings and fly, but we're constantly held back. We're told no. And we're used for our time and resources. It's immoral. It's wrong. It's so simply wrong. You know, when I created Sentinel Circle, I wanted it to be a place where we all could tap into our true potential. Throughout our lives, there was always a barrier to overcome, a hindrance, an obstacle. We struggle and fight while people like Epstein takes advantage of everyone around him. And it's not just Epstein, it's Weinstein, it's who else? It was Bill Cosby. It was I can't think of the actor's name all of a sudden. Kevin Spacey. You know, when people say, well, they're only targeting women, no. Kevin Spacey, he targeted boys. Allegedly. There's been lawsuits settled, and that's the part that drives me up the wall. Is no one takes it to court. They just they take the settlement like money somehow makes it better. I just want these people exposed for what they are. And we all know it, but they get to walk around saying, "Oh, it wasn't me. I'm innocent." Epstein, people forget, he's already a convicted chomo. But his punishment, you want to know his punishment? It was 15 months. It was reduced down to 13 months. No, pardon me, 18 months reduced down to 13 months. And he was allowed work release, so he would leave during the day and come back at night. If you guys did something like that, you guys would never get work release. You'd be locked up for a long time and then put on a list. Well, to be fair, he was put on the list. I will admit that. Let's be fair. But at that point, he was accused of abusing 36 young girls. But he was only convicted of solicitation of a child for prostitution. That was it. That was all they could get him on. And quite frankly, I don't think they tried. The more I find out about that case, the more I realize that they slow walked that. Even the police, the Palm Beach Police Department, they were upset about the whole situation. That goes to show how badly the prosecution. And if I recall correctly, the prosecutor that was involved in his case, the first case, ended up becoming a district attorney for the federal government, and was also involved in the Epstein case the second time around. That's what I'm saying is it just seems like every relationship is so incestuous. And what even upsets me more is the man got to leave afterwards. He got to leave the country. When you're on the list, you're not supposed to be able to leave the country. That's one of the restrictions. But he was still allowed to leave. He was still allowed to have a passport. If you had a conviction like that, if you were on the list, you would not be able to have housing. You would not be able to find a job. You would not be able to do the things that you want to do. Now, granted, you should be on the list if you're convicted. But he still, after being convicted, got preferential treatment. People like Epstein get to do whatever they want with no consequences. That's the simple truth. Our system, everything from top down, is tainted and corrupted. And no amount of voting will ever change that. I don't care what anybody says. I don't believe that voting will fix the problem. It'll always be the same people in power. And I'm not just talking about your politicians. I'm not. It's the unelected bureaucrats also. We were warned by our founders. And I don't mean to make this political, because I know the moment the founders are involved, oh, he's a conservatard, he's a MAGTard. But our founders firmly believed that small government was best because they believed in the power of man. That was an enlightened position to take during the Enlightenment. They really did believe the power of the people, because our country was the first country to be like that. Before, the world was ruled by kings and freaking dukes. Kings, emperors, dukes, royalty. We were the first group of people to be ruled by ourselves. Men ruling themselves. Even King George was stunned when he found out that the President Washington did not run for a third term. Washington was approached by his officers to create a military dictatorship, and he turned them down. We are very fortunate to have the wisdom of our forefounders. Very fortunate. We are a very lucky country. You know, but it just, that's what I'm saying is these people who are in power, they write the laws, they pass the laws that affect us directly. And the judges, they don't get removed. They're the same judges that always seem to be ruling against our best interests. And it just never changes. Make no mistake, my friends. What we witnessed this past week only highlights specifically what I've been feeling for years, and I'm sure what you've been feeling for years too. We've all been lied to. And now they've gotten away with it. Now you'll see that the lies are just going to get weaker and weaker. And when they realize that they no longer have to lie to us, then you'll actually see what they are really like. I don't want to be here when that day comes. I don't want that day to ever come, but if it does, I don't want to be here. Because when they start telling you the truth, it's going to be ugly. I hope everybody here understands. And I know that we now receive, because I'm recording this on the 12th, we've just received news today that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are threatening to step down unless Bondi steps down. I don't think Bondi's going to step down. The question is, what is Trump going to do? I honestly think he's not going to do anything. This was such a horrible misstep. And I would have expected this from a Democrat, simply because, Biden really didn't do much about it. And nobody really spoke when Epstein was arrested and then later when he was found. I think that Trump really screwed up bad. And I'm not saying that as anti-Trump or pro-Trump. I am being pragmatic. I will be the first to admit that, I can see benefit from both sides of the aisle. They both done things that I've liked and they both done things I don't like. But I have to be realistic here. I can't just be going around saying, no, my team's the greatest and your team sucks. No. I'm not going to do that. I don't have the character for it. But I strongly believe that this is going to get worse before it gets better. If it gets better. I honestly think that by this time next week, we won't even be talking about it. And that upsets me more than anything I can ever describe. Those victims are not going to get justice. They're going to just disappear. And that's how it's going to be. I'm sorry for the dourness of this video, but I had to get it out. I had to. So, anyways, I hope you have a good day. And I hope you have a good week. I'm going to be releasing this come Monday. So it's Monday when you are watching it. Okay? Thank you for being here. Try and be good to each other. Goodbye.